The night is calm, and somewhere beyond the dark window, a red world turns in silence. I like to think of Mars as a quiet companion, close enough to imagine, far enough to dream about. Its deserts breathe dust, the color of rusted light. Winds trace old riverbeds. Sunsets fade into soft violet, like the pulse before sleep. If you listen closely, you might almost hear it, the hush of air, too thin to hold an echo, the slow whisper of sand remembering water. Here, in this small pool of quiet, we can drift toward that distant shore together. Nothing to solve, nothing to chase, just a story about a planet that once might have sighed like Earth does now. If this journey feels right, a quiet like and a soft subscribe would be lovely. For now, let your shoulders loosen and your breath settle low. We'll begin together, unhurried and warm. The night keeps its hush, and out there, just beyond the dark edge of the window, a small red companion turns without hurry. We have watched it for as long as we have watched anything. A steady ember among colder sparks, a point of rusted light that seems to warm the eyes simply by being itself. People guided journeys by its glow and wondered whether a breath like ours ever touched its sand. The red is real, carried by dust ground fine, lit by a sun that reaches it with a soft, late gold. So we take our time, let frost creep across dunes in the early light. A thin lace that vanishes with the first warmth. Let wind lift, hesitate, then carry a veil of grains over old riverbeds, rewriting edges by the smallest degrees. Let canyons widen until they could swallow countries. Mountains rise to brush its space. Air grow thin enough that sound feels shy. What we hold is a companion's quiet life, how it formed, what it kept, what it lost, and what those changes can whisper back to us. On a crisp night, you could step outside, lift your face, and find the red point without any help. It does not flicker the way stars do. It glows, steady and low. That steadiness set it apart for early watchers. So did its wandering. Most lights kept their places, circling together through the hours. A few did not. The wanderers' planets slid slowly against the starry pattern. The red one was the most arresting. For long stretches, it drifted eastward. Then, as if reconsidering, it hesitated, stopped, and seemed to slide backward before resuming its path. Those loops' retrograde motion can feel deliberate, like a pause mid-journey to think. The sky received names for this wanderer that matched its color and its mood. In Mesopotamia, it was linked to Nergal, fierce and iron-touched. The Greeks saw Ares. The Romans spoke of Mars and kept the warlike tint. Blood and battle were easy metaphors for a planet that was, in truth, cold and spare. Yet the names remained, and with them, a feeling that this light was not an extra, not a background spark, but an actor with a role. Those backward loops puzzled people for centuries. If Earth sat unmoving at the center of everything, as many believed, then Mars needed to ride circles upon circles to make sense. Patient minds built clockwork to explain the show, circles upon circles like a flower. It fit, more or less, but the fit was a cloak over a wrong frame. The insight that loosened the knot was simple and generous. Put the sun in the center. Let Earth be a wanderer too. Then the strange behavior becomes perspective. When our quicker path carries us past the red planet, it appears to drift backward, the way a slower car seems to slide behind you as you pass. Seen this way, the mystery is clarified and remains just as lovely to watch. Even without glass, early astronomers followed the red planet with extraordinary care. Calendars folded its loops into their pages, In temples and towers, observers marked its pauses and returns. The planet became part of timekeeping, of planting and sailing, and, often, of omen. Beneath the stories ran a deeper skill, night after night, letting pattern become understanding. A small tube of lenses in the 17th century changed the feeling of the thing. Through Galileo's modest instrument, the wanderer turned from a point into a disk, a world, not a star. It was blurry in that first view, but it had a face, a place for light to fall and shadow to gather. A little later, with better glass and steadier air, a dark triangle near the equator came into view. Drawn by Christian Huygens, it would later be called Syrtis Major. Watching its dark wedge slide across the disk, he guessed the length of a Martian day, just over 24 hours, close enough to ours to feel like a handshake across space. More glass, more patience, more sketches. The bright caps at the poles waxed and waned with the seasons. Fine streaks and patches seemed to shift from year to year. It was natural to imagine water, snow, and frost, perhaps thin clouds, sometimes even rain. The thought of water invited the thought of life. By the late 19th century, some observers were certain they saw pin-straight lines crossing the planet like careful stitchwork. Maps were drawn, canals were spoken with confidence. The eye can be earnest and still be mistaken. Later views dissolved those lines into chance and wish. The planet taught us even before we could touch it with machines. Watch it move long enough, and a truth appears. The heavens are not fixed. The red point that brightens, fades, disappears into the sun's glare, and returns months later, reminds us that time out there is layered and patient. Learning that patience, naming a loop, plotting a pause, opened a path toward understanding not just one world, but the harmony that holds many together. Roll the clock back to a younger Sunday. The space around it is thick with dust and ice and the smoke of creation. Grains meet, stick, and tumble pebbles, then boulders, then city-sized seeds of worlds. In a belt between the sun and the cold home of future asteroids, one of those seeds grew into Mars. The pantry there was not as full as the one that fed Earth. Fewer ingredients, fewer chances to gain weight. The result shows in numbers we hold gently. A world about half Earth's diameter and roughly a tenth of its mass. A large world holds its heat the way a thick loaf keeps warmth at the center. A small world cools quickly. Heat matters because it keeps the deep metal moving. That motion, in many planets, spins up a magnetic field, a wide, invisible shield that turns a storm of solar particles aside. As the red planet's inner heat faded, its magnetic heartbeats slowed and then quieted. The shield thinned, the air grew lean, warmth was harder to keep. The stage was set for a long drift from wetter, milder days toward the cold, dry calm we see now. Before that cooling, the world was busy. Volcanoes opened and poured out sheets of dark rock. Without plates to shuffle the crust, hot spots stayed anchored, feeding the same mountains again and again. One of them, Olympus Mons, climbed to nearly 3 times the height of Everest and spread across an area about the size of France. It looks today like a sleeping giant under a smooth blanket, its edges scalloped, its summit caldera wide and quiet. Impacts wrote other chapters. In the early, violent centuries of the solar system, bodies struck often. In the north lies a deep, broad lowland that many think began as a single colossal wound, the Borealis Basin, an impact so large it may have reshaped half a world in an instant. Elsewhere, craters overlap like raindrops, Some are crisp, some long since softened by lava or dust. Paradoxically, these blows may have offered brief warmth. The energy they delivered could melt ice, thicken air for a while, and send water running. Rivers carved long slashes and gentle bends, feeding lakes that lay quietly until they dried. Beneath the crust, heat from radioactive elements and the leftover push of formation kept rock soft for a time. Magma rose, cooled, and layered the planet like pages in a book left open. Without the recycling of moving plates, those pages remained. Earth rewrites itself. Mars mostly saves its drafts. That persistence lets us read a long story without missing chapters. How long did the fires burn? Longer than we first guessed. But young-looking lava flows lie in some places, unsoftened by time. A few may be as recent as a few million years, a blink in geologic time, the coal at the edge of the ash that keeps a little heat. The planet is not lively the way Earth is lively, but it may still twitch now and then, reminding us that sleep and silence are not the same. Imagine the early climate, when the atmosphere was thicker, thin clouds, sometimes snow, perhaps rains that fell lightly and did not last long. As the air thinned, the cycle slowed. Water withdrew to the poles and into the ground. What remained was the memory of motion, the lines that streams cut, the deltas that opened like hands, the shore-like curves that suggest old lakes and seas. All of this sits there now, unhurried. Dunes ripple within craters where winds find paths. Frost paints the sands at dawn, then fades. The light is sharp by day, pink and butterscotch at evening. The air is too thin for thunder. Silence rests on everything, broken only by the hiss of wind and, where our small machines have landed, the hum of their own hearts. It is easy to think of loss when we list what the planet no longer has: a strong field, an easy blanket of air, a wide and ready cycle of rain. It helps to hold another truth next to that. The same smallness that let heat escape also froze the past in place. Where Earth's lively skin closes wounds and folds stories into mountains, Mars leaves them open. Ancient river deltas sit as lessons. Shorelines that may have cradled water lie like old rings in a tub. Volcanoes keep their clean shapes, craters keep their rims. That library matters for more than curiosity. The forces that made the red world collisions, cooling, wind, and time work here too, though our outcomes differ. By reading them there, where the handwriting is clearer, we read our own margins better. We learn what size means for a planet's fate. We learn how a magnetic field protects a sky, and what happens when that guard lowers. We learn how water behaves when the air is thin, how ice migrates, how dust can carry a climate on its back. And there are the explorers' tough, patient machines with wheels and wings, and the soft persistence of any good traveler. They taste soil, try rocks with gentle tools, breathe the air and weigh it, listen for tremors, wait out winters, and send us home the sort of pictures that make a person lean forward without noticing. They are careful under the cold, careful with power, careful with every motion. Stand with them for a minute in your mind. The sun is small, but bright. The shadows are crisp. A ridge rises, layered like patient time. Beyond it, the plain runs to the horizon, broken by butte and basin, ringed with old scars. You can feel, without words, that every grain beneath your imagined boot holds a story about warmth and wind, flood and freezing, a sky that once held more and now holds less. The backward loops taught us to move our seat, the red tint taught us to look for dust and light. The shapes on the ground taught us to watch for the marks that water leaves even after water is gone. The height of a mountain taught us what a world without drifting plates can build. The breadth of a basin taught us what a single blow can do to a world. The thin air taught us how fragile warmth can be when the guard around it fades. If you visit with your eyes only, you still bring back something useful, a sense for time that isn't rushed, a comfort with slow changes, a way to hold two images at once. A world that may once have been blue, and the red quiet it keeps now. Somewhere under dust, salts and clays remember the touch of water. Somewhere inside, heat lingers just enough to remind stone of its softer past. None of it is loud, none of it begs. It rests and lets you rest with it. Canyons stretch shadow to shadow. Valles Marineris opens like an ancient seam, so wide that countries would fit within it, so deep that sunrise takes its time to find the floor. To the west stand broad, shield volcanoes in a row, each a chapter of lava laid atop another. In the north, a plain lowers, as if half the planet exhaled and never quite breathed back in. At the poles, layered ice stacks, like pages of diary written in thin white strokes. Some nights the planet draws close to us and brightens. Some nights it slips farther away and dims. The cycle is gentle and long. When it stands high and clear, you can almost feel the old observers gathering at your side. Priests, sailors, poets, farmers, each lifting a face to the same ember and finding in it something needed, or simply the comfort of a pattern that returns. Underneath the watching, the science is there, not sharp or cold, but woven into the fabric of the seeing. 4 billion years is not just a number, it is a slow breath between fire and frost. Half a diameter is not just a measure, it is a fate written in cooling metal and escaping air. 24 hours and change is not just a coincidence, it is a small bridge between kinds of mourning. 3 Everests is not just a boast, it is the patience of stone, fed from below without a moving lid. So the red world keeps turning, dunes shift, rocks crack in the cold and are mended by dust. Frost comes and goes, the thin air whispers and then holds its breath. Our small machines hum and look around. A companion, steady in the dark, it stirs a longing that doesn't fade, a wish, not only to understand, but to set this place gently within the quiet map of our own. Let that thought loosen the shoulders. Hold the horizon in your inner eye. Hear the soft crunch of dawn frost. Watch a lazy dust devil lift at noon. Picture, long ago, a river folding itself through a valley, and the valley keeping the memory. Nothing to solve, nothing to chase. Only a world and a way of seeing it that leaves room for rest. If you could rise above that memory and hover over the young red world, parts of the scene would feel strangely familiar. Not endless powder-dry plains, but braids of rivers, scattered lakes in shallow bowls, perhaps even a broad, quiet sea spreading across the north like a sigh. Smaller than home, colder under a softer sun, yet wet enough for water to move with purpose, finding slopes, pooling, shining, and slipping on. That chapter wrote its name into stone and never quite let it fade. In the 1,970 seconds, when our first orbiters, Mariner, then Viking, went to look, the patterns answered back. Channels that forked and rejoined like rain remembered, some running for hundreds of kilometers, gathering tributaries into wider valleys. They weren't random, they had the logic of water, the patience of gravity, the easy curves a drop learns when it has time. Look closer, and the variety becomes a soft chorus. Narrow, branching valleys like the ones rain carves on earth. Long, deep troughs that speak of sudden floods or the collapse of hidden aquifers. And then, the grand outflow channels, immense and blunt, as if a door had opened under pressure and whole regions had been rewritten in days. Where those rivers slowed near still water, they left deltas, fans of sediment that keep the shape of the pause. Jezero Crater holds one of the loveliest seen from above, a clean wedge pointing toward a vanished lake. Perseverance, our careful rover, is nosing at its edges now, tasting grains, reading layers, listening for whispers locked in mudstone. A place like that is shelter. Minerals gather there. Time thickens. If life ever tried to take hold, such a delta would have been a kind harbor. Minerals tell their own soft truth. Certain clays only form when rock sits with liquid water for a long, calm while. Sulfates like to collect as briny pools evaporate, leaving crusts bright and brittle. Orbiters, carrying spectrometers that separate sunlight into its signatures, have found these minerals across old terrains. The chemistry is a fingerprint. Water was here, not once, but often enough to matter. Even their distribution hints at the planet's mood swing. In older sites, clays are common water that was relatively gentle, near neutral, steady. Later, sulfates appear more often, water growing acidic, briefer, more stressed. The record reads like the page of a diary, a shift toward the cold, thin air we know now. Set that beside a young Earth, and the picture sharpens by contrast. 4 billion years ago, our own world was rowdy impacts, frequent, volcanoes, busy. Yet Earth had the edge, larger, closer to the sun, and wrapped in a thicker atmosphere. Seas collected and stayed. On Mars, the start may have been similar lakes, rivers, perhaps even an ocean covering up to a third of the planet's surface in the north, but the candle was shorter. Smaller worlds cool faster, lighter air slips away. Mars had a window, and the view through it may have been long enough. Life's oldest traces on Earth sparkle in rocks around 3.5 billion years old. Some hints reach further still. If Mars kept liquid water for hundreds of millions of years, is it so hard to picture microbes finding a niche? The chemistry was kind. Water dissolves, carries, and mixes. Sunlight, volcanic warmth, mineral energy. The pantry was stocked. The question is not whether the ingredients existed. It is how long the kitchen stayed open. Maybe the rivers and lakes came in pulses, seasons that lasted centuries, warmed by eruptions or nudged by orbital tilts. Maybe the early air was thick for a while, letting lakes linger and shallow seas wrinkle under a pink sky. Either way, the traces sketch a rhythm, wetter phases, then drier ones, the balance slowly leaning toward thirst. And when the surface finally gave up most of its water, not all of it vanished into space, much likely moved inward and downward, into ice, into pores, into briny pockets that could stay liquid under pressure. Radar soundings over some polar regions suggest subglacial lakes might still hide there, though the evidence is debated like a rumor you want to believe, but won't repeat too loudly. If they exist, their echoes small, cold, and stubborn. What lingers is how visible all this remains. Earth edits itself. Rivers wander, mountains soften, plates dive and return. Mars, quiet and spare, keeps its drafts. You can trace an ancient channel from headwater to mouth, see its meanders, its cutoffs, the way it widens as it nears a once standing lake. It's beautiful because the language of water is universal. Given gravity and time, it writes the same cursive everywhere. It's haunting because the ink is dry. The riverbeds are empty. The lakes are dust bowls. The ocean floor, if it was one, lies cracked and silent. Try to stand there in your mind. The light is thin but warm in the afternoon. A ridge casts a long, soft blade of shadow across a basin. The sky is pale coral, the sun small, the horizon low. Water glints under a breeze, and then small ripples push themselves into a quiet shore, marked by greenish stains, minerals laid down grain by grain. Whether anything living watched that glitter is still an unanswered question. What we do have are shapes and sediments and the chemistry of stones. They speak of a world that was alive in the way worlds are alive when they move and cycle and change. To listen is to hear a language older than cities, the grammar of flow. Northward lies the Great Basin, the northern plains, flatter than the southern highlands, lower by several kilometers over a wide sweep, like a bowl formed by the planet's own hand. From orbit, the contrast is gentle but undeniable. Pocked highlands to the south. To the north, smoother country that stretches for thousands of kilometers as though an immense tide had planed it. The idea that this basin once held an ocean is not a new dream. In the 1,980 seconds, topographic maps drawn from spacecraft data drove the point home. The north sits low, the south sits high, and the boundary arcs around the planet in a way that feels like coastline. Along that edge, long ridges and terraces trace curves across the land for astonishing distances, features that resemble shorelines on Earth, raised by waves or reshaped by the lift and fall of water over ages. Erosion works slowly on Mars, so such lines, once made, have time to survive. The story they suggest is breath-stealing in its scale. Rivers from the south feeding into a northern sea, hundreds of meters deep in places, ice rafts in winter, foam and spray in summer, all under a sky just thick enough to carry warmth, alien and familiar in the same glance. Yet if the ocean lived, it left quietly. To see why, follow the air. Early Mars likely wore a denser blanket, trapping heat and pressing gently on every surface. That pressure matters. Without it, liquid water either flashes to vapor or locks into ice. As the small world cooled and its core quieted, the planet's magnetic shield faded. The solar wind charged particles racing outward from the sun could reach high into the atmosphere and begin the slow theft. Hydrogen and helium were the first to escape. Then, shaken and warmed by storms from the sun, molecules of carbon dioxide and water drifted away molecule by molecule, a soft leak that goes on even now. As the blanket thinned, temperatures fell and surface pressure dropped. Lakes shrank, rivers slowed, then stopped. An ocean would retreat into bays, then into ponds, then into silence. Ice took a larger share, some locked in the polar caps, some buried as permafrost, some perhaps lost entirely to space. MAVEN, orbiting since 2014, measures the process in real time. During solar storms, the loss spikes. In quiet times, it settles. Small rates, large consequences, given enough years. Hydrogen isotope ratios in the air help us tally the missing. The heavier form tends to stay, while the lighter drifts away, leaving a signature that fits a world that has bled its water. And yet the picture is not neat enough to frame. Some scientists read those shorelines as the work of lava or the rise and fall of crust, not waves. Some suggest multiple seas, oceans that came and went in cycles, rather than a single long-lived one. Warm periods sparked by eruptions or by the planet's tilt, followed by hard winters that lasted millennia. The debate is not a quarrel. It is the care of minds trying to match, shape to cause. Even in the uncertainty, the ocean's possibility enlarges the story. Seas are mixers. They take minerals and energy and stir. On Earth, shallows are nurseries. Life loves their gradients. If Mars hosted life, the northern basin would have been a broad and generous stage until the air grew too thin and the curtain came down. What tugs at the heart is the completeness of the erasure. Stand on the imagined shoreline today and nothing breaks. No surf, no gulls, no taste of salt on the wind. The ridges are there, the terraces curl away into distance, the basin yawns. The sea itself is a ghost, drawn in contours and heights. On Earth, old oceans leave seashells, coral, layered silt. On Mars, we hunt for subtler signs, minerals that only settle from brine, rocks arranged by waves, chemical patterns that say, gently, habitable. Each detection is a bead on a string. The necklace is still being knotted. It's sobering to hold two images at once, a red and blue world under a young sun. Then the red alone, the blue poured out into space or locked into ice. The change is a reminder of how narrow the conditions for comfort can be, and how quickly on cosmic clocks those conditions can slide. Picture dusk on the edge of that ancient ocean, a thin breeze, light that softens toward the horizon, stars sharpening as the cold comes on. Even then, the sea's fate was tethered to a shrinking sky. The air tells another long, quiet story. Once, there was much more of it, enough to wrap the planet, soften harsh light, keep water from leaping into vapor or collapsing into frost. Over time, the blanket frayed to threads. Today, the Martian atmosphere is less than 1% of Earth's, so slight that wind carves and dust dances, but sound goes thin and water cannot linger bare under the Sunday. Where did the air go? The answer starts deep, where metal moves. In the beginning, Mars likely held a molten, churning core of iron and nickel. Motion there twists magnetism into a planet-sized shield. Earth's shield is strong and steady. It catches the solar wind and steers it around us. Mars, being smaller, cooled faster. The inner dynamo slowed. The shield faltered. Then the wind could touch, could strip, could pick away at the upper air. Not a storm tearing a roof in a night, but a constant weathering leaf by leaf, molecule by molecule. Hydrogen fled first, then helium. Later, bits of water and carbon dioxide followed, especially in the flare and fury of solar storms. With less air to trap heat, the ground cooled. With lower pressure, liquid water found fewer safe harbors. Rivers retreated, lakes withdrew. The hydrologic hum fell to a whisper. Maven has watched this erosion since 2014, measuring how bursts from the sun push atmospheric loss higher, then watching it settle again. Even now, the escape continues, tiny in a human day, immense across millions of years. The measurements match the chemistry. The balance of heavy and light hydrogen in the air points to massive water loss over time. None of this requires drama. A planet without a strong magnetic field is like a door left on the latch. Eventually, the wind will find its way in. Some of the story hides underground. Ice fills pores. Brines find layers where salt lowers the freezing point enough to keep them liquid under pressure. Radar sends whispers downward, and sometimes the echoes return too bright to be only rock, hinting at subglacial lakes. Controversial, possible, not yet proven. Even if those pockets are rare, they say the planet does not forget entirely. Cold can store more than it ends. Hold the whole arc in your hands, like a bowl. Early water writes channels and deltas. Minerals confirm the conversation between rock and liquid. A northern basin may have held an ocean. The air thins, the shield fades, the wind plucks at the sky, lakes dwindle, and ice takes the glassy half of the bargain. What remains is a map you can read with patient eyes. Branching valleys that teach you to trust your sense of flow. Outflow channels that capture the drama of a sudden release. Shoreline-like curves that make you picture tides in a day with two suns. The sun above, the planet's own slow breathing below. There is comfort, oddly, in the way Mars keeps the record. A delta in Jezero holds layers like counted breaths. Each band is a change. A river strong, then weak. A lake high, then low. Clays whisper of long baths in gentle water. Sulfates crackle with the memory of brine evaporating in a dry spell. Somewhere in those thin varves, in grains fine enough to shelter organic traces, a story could be waiting. Perhaps nothing more than the chemistry of habitability. Perhaps the tiniest fossil shapes, if fortune and time conspired kindly. Perseverance gathers samples for a future hand to hold. The rover does not hurry. It brushes, it drills, it smells the dust, it photographs small things with love. Think of the outflow channels again, the ones that look like a door opened and a valley fell. Imagine ground ice melting under warmth from a burst of volcanism, or water trapped under pressure breaking through a cap of rock. For days or weeks the flood raged. Then it was quiet again. Catastrophe and calm layered through ages. That rhythm fits a world that warmed occasionally, not constantly. It also fits a world with cycles, a planet not dead, but drifting into a slower life. Across the basin of the north, the question of the ocean changes shape depending on where you rest your gaze. In some stretches, terraces draw clean arcs you can trace with a fingertip on a map. In others, the lines fray into mounds and benches that could be benches of lava as easily as old beaches. Even if the ocean wove in and out of existence, appearing during warm epochs and vanishing under frost, the idea alone teaches seas do not need to be permanent to matter. Temporary can be enough to mix chemistry, to transport nutrients, to build sediments that trap time. The present air is a lesson you can feel against the skin. At less than 1% of Earth's pressure, dawn, frost whispers, and then vanishes by noon. Sunsets bloom blue through dust, and the sky is too light to shoulder thunder. A rover's drill must coax gently. There's no liquid water to bind the powder and let it fall away, and a human breath would find no purchase without a suit. Ghostly as it is, the atmosphere still keeps weather. Gusts that spin dust into devils. Seasons that lean on the polar caps until they swell and shrink. Thin clouds that sometimes thread the morning. Trace the thread deeper, and it runs to size. A world half Earth's diameter, and a tenth its mass cools quickly. The inner dynamo idles. The magnetic shield falters. The solar wind steps closer. Flares warm the upper air and lift particles to escape. The lower air thins and chills. What was once a wrap becomes a veil, not from malice or failure, but from mass, distance, and time bargaining in slow motion. And yet, persistence holds its ground. Deltas open like hands. Channels curve toward basins. Minerals keep water's memories. The northern lowlands shape your mouth around the word ocean before your mind consents. Instruments weigh hydrogen and reckon how much water left. An orbiter watches loss spike in a storm, then settle. Hints of subglacial lakes invite careful debate. A rover sits on Jezero's fossil fan and chooses stones with patient care. Stand under that sky, and the numbers turn tactile. Daylight arrives as a muted blade, dimmer than home, yet strangely sharp, and the sun sits smaller, about 2/3 the size, its glow sifted through a haze, the color of ground brick. The air hardly feels like air, too thin to carry scent or soften sound, too weightless to give your lungs any hold. Without a suit, it wouldn't be the cold that takes you first, but the pressure that isn't there, breath a door that will not open. Wind would move past with more motion than force, lifting dust into slow, tawny veils. Voices would fall flat after a few steps. The horizon would keep its distance even as you walked toward it. In that eerie, intimate quiet, the planet's long story becomes immediate. The veil above, the fossils underfoot, and the steady work of time binding them together. The wind would play its trick. Speeds that look fierce on paper, gusts racing near 100 kilometers an hour, would touch your suit like a shy hand. There is so little substance for them to push with that even storms feel soft to the body while they carve and lift, patient as time. The paradox becomes the planet's signature, a world capable of storms that wrap it globe to globe, and yet whose touch on skin would be gentler than a seaside breeze. Look outward, and the sky shows its palette. Near noon, the horizon blends rusty tan into salmon ground. The dust filters and scatters light, so the dome above can turn butterscotch, sometimes a faint, warm yellow. At dusk, the magic reverses. Those same grains scatter the reds away and let blue threads pass. For a breath or two, the sunset glows with an odd, quiet blue, a soft lantern over a landscape that does not answer back. Then the color slips and the cold takes hold. With so little air to store heat, evening drops like a stone. Temperatures can fall by dozens of degrees in a handful of hours, warmth radiating into space as quickly as it arrives. Night sharpens the stars, and the silence deepens until you can almost hear it, the hush of a world that cannot keep its heat. When the sky thinned, more than weather changed, possibility narrowed. Thick air is a gift. It shields against radiation, cradles liquid water, softens extremes. While Mars kept that gift, it may have been a place where life small, stubborn, unassuming, could make a home. As the blanket unraveled, high-energy particles from the sun and the deep reach of space stepped down to the ground with less and less resistance. What might have lived had to retreat or end down into rock, under ice, into brines, or into memory. Yet even in this spare state, beauty remains. Dust paints gradients at dawn and dusk. Thin, high clouds, ice crystals or carbon dioxide drift like pale gauze and sometimes catch the sun in pastel. Their shadows are faint smudges that walk the ground without hurry. With no leaves to rustle and no insects to sing, the sky feels both immense and close, like a ceiling that remembers another time. Each missing atom carries a record, not written in ink or stone, but in the thinness of the air, the clarity of the night, the blue at sunset, and the quiet hiss of wind, too light to carry your voice. Look up and you are looking into a story of slow change, of a shield that failed, of a climate that moved from comfortable to austere. It is not emptiness, it is history made visible. Dust is the planet's native language, not dust like the lazy tuft under a sofa, but powder, ground finer than talc, iron-rich and electrostatic. a film that clings to nearly everything. It lends the world its red, a coat of oxidized iron spread thin across surfaces. The rocks beneath wear many colors, but the planet presents itself in rust because the skin of every grain has had time to redden. Wind and wild swings of temperature worry boulders into pebbles, pebbles into flour, flour into smoke. Iron in those crumbs meets the trace oxygen the sky still holds, and the reaction is patient and thorough. Given long enough, nearly every exposed speck turns the color of a remembered bicycle left in the rain. Because the grains are so fine, they act almost like a gas when stirred. Even modest breezes lift them. In such thin air, they fall slowly and can hang aloft for long stretches. The result is a planet-wide haze that softens light by day and mutes colors from orbit. But dust is a creature of local whims too. Sun-warmed ground sends pillars of rising air spinning, and dust devils rise like transparent ropes, sometimes taller than a kilometer, wandering the plains and leaving dark tracks where they vacuum the surface clean. They look dramatic and feel delicate. Step into one, and you might not be knocked down. There is too little heft in the air for that, but you would be powdered by a million grains, finding seams and edges. Then there are the planetary set pieces, global dust storms. Every few years, if conditions align, dust lifted from one region changes the heating of the atmosphere enough to alter winds, which lift more dust, which warms the air further, which changes winds again. A runaway loop that builds until the entire world is wrapped in pale orange for weeks or months. From space, Mars turns to a soft, glowing sphere. On the ground, the danger is not the pelt of grit, but the sudden dimming of the Sunday solar-powered explorers go hungry. In 2018, a world-engulfing storm ended Opportunity's long, brave run. Panels choked, power fell, heaters cooled, and a 15-year voice went quiet. Dust doesn't only paint skies and threaten missions, it nudges climate. Suspended grains absorb and scatter sunlight, warming the air even as they cool the surface beneath. Those mismatches shift temperature gradients that drive winds. The winds move ice, especially at the poles. The poles answer through the seasons, and the whole system finds a new balance that still leans cold and dry. Over long spans, dust helps keep the planet in its current stillness, a subtle governor on warmth. Exploration lives with dust the way sailors live with salt. It reaches into joints, grinds at gears, paints camera windows, blankets, solar panels. Engineers design brushes and shakers, clever surfaces and seals, but nothing is perfect. Time is dust's ally. Every extra month on Mars is another thin layer settling where you do not want it. Human visitors will inherit the same adversary. Lunar dust taught us how sharp and clingy airless grains can be. Martian dust is likely similar electrostatic, fine enough to drift into lungs, carrying perchlorates and iron that demand caution. Suits will need thoughtful skins. Airlocks will need rituals. The same iron oxide that makes a lovely photograph is a stubborn guest on glove, visor, and boot. And yet the very stuff that complicates work also composes much of the planet's gentle art. Wind-made dunes ripple like frozen waves, their dark basaltic sand curling in patterns that look like music written onto plains. Pale dust collects in the lee of rocks and draws negative shadows. It organizes itself into delicate streaks. It drapes slopes in shades that shift with season and storm. Dust is also an archive. The wind is a tireless courier that has spent eons mixing fragments from far places. Scoop a pinch and you hold a blend of stories, volcanic glass, weathered clays, salts born of evaporating brines. Instruments can read that mix and glimpse geology beyond the horizon, as if the planet has been passing around samples for anyone patient enough to look. If life ever stirred here, perhaps chemistry tied to its work is trapped in those fine grains, or layered quietly in sediments. The odds are unknowable from here, but the target is tempting. Dust as a thin library of habitability. From the smallest fleck to the largest monument, the theme persists. Scale without noise. Consider the mountain that outgrows metaphors. On Earth, Everest reaches a little over 88 kilometers above sea level. Impressive, proud, snow-lit. On Mars, Everest would look almost modest at the foot of Olympus Mons. This shield volcano rises about 22 kilometers from base to summit and spreads so wide that if you stood on one edge, the planet's curve would hide the other. Its slope is gentle, a long, low ramp built by countless sheets of fluid lava that drifted far before they cooled. Without tectonic plates to drag a hotspot along, the same vent could feed the same place for millions of years, piling layer upon layer until a province became a mountain. Olympus Mons is not alone. To its east sprawls the uplifted Tharsis region, a high, broad bulge in the crust, crowned by other giants, Ascraeus Mons, Pavonis Mons, Arcea Mons. Any one of them would dominate Earth's horizon. Here, they read as a chord rather than a solo. The bulge is so massive, it may have whispered to the planet's very balance and helped set the stage for the vast, neighboring canyon system, Valles Marineris, where dawn takes its time to reach the floor. The volcanoes are monuments to an era when the planet ran hot. Volcanism is a conversation between inner heat and outer cold, and early Mars answered loudly. For ages, molten rock found paths upward and poured in flows that could cross hundreds of kilometers. Some eruptions likely lasted weeks or months, lofting ash and exhaling gases, carbon dioxide, water vapor that thickened air and warmed nights. Where hot rock met ground ice, floods may have rushed outward, carving sudden channels that look today like punctuation marks in the landscape. Now, the giants rest. The last whispers of activity may be as recent as a few million years ago, geologically a heartbeat, but Olympus Mons and its siblings have not erupted in the time of our watching. With little internal heat left to move, and no plates to rearrange stress, the mantle quieted, the fountains stilled. Erosion works slowly here. Thin air, no rain to speak of, cold that breaks, but rarely washes away. The mountains keep their faces. They will likely look much the same millions of years from now, rims crisp, flanks clean, calderas wide as cities nested inside cities. Imagine yourself, protected, near the base of Olympus Mons. The slope tilts so gently that your body says, hill, not mountain, yet it goes on and on. Low gravity helps each step, but distance breaks the mind's ruler. The horizon keeps retreating. Days could pass, and the summit would remain a rumor. At the top, the caldera spreads in a complex of collapsed pits and scalloped cliffs, the roof of a once vast magma chamber fallen in on itself. You might run a gloved hand over rock chilled for ages and feel the absence not just of heat, but of hurry. Dust drifts and settles. The sun is bright but small. The sky is thin but endless. Across the planet, smaller features fill in the chapters. Sheets of old lava lie like dark lakes that cooled in place. Tapered cones speak of explosive eruptions, where cinders and ash rained back to build steep mounds. Long fissures show where the ground parted and poured fire not from a round throat but from a line, drawing sinuous ribbons that remain visible from orbit calligraphy in basalt. Together they outline the inner life Mars once had and the cooling that followed. They hint at pockets of warmth that may have lingered under ice, refuges where water stayed liquid long after the surface froze, places where chemistry could have remained lively. Volcanoes breathe gases into the sky. Skies answer by holding heat and carrying clouds. Clouds snow and melt and shape rivers. Rivers deposit deltas that keep memories. In that feedback, Mars may have found moments of balance, times when air grew thicker, water more persistent, warmth more patient. Then, the slow forces reasserted themselves. A small planet cools, a dynamo fades, a magnetic shield weakens, the solar wind reaches in, the atmosphere lifts away atom by atom. The canvas does not tear, but it thins until the paint behaves differently. Even in quiet, the land continues to move in small ways. Rocks crack in the cold and heal by dust. Frost rims dunes at dawn, then sublimates to nothing by noon. Dust devils write temporary lines. Global storms lift and settle a film that remakes color without changing shape. The poles breathe caps growing and shrinking with the seasons, layering ice into a diary of winters and summers written in bright strokes. For future travelers, the lesson is gentle and firm. Here is a sky that teaches what pressure means. Here is dust that shows how fine things can steer a world. Here is a mountain that tells what steady feeding without drifting plates can build. Here is a silence that says a planet can be loud in slow motion. You could collect a handful of soil and hold millions of grains, each a page volcanic, sedimentary, oxidized, salted, each moved and mixed by a wind too light to push you over and strong enough to lift a world's worth of history into the air. This awe isn't the thrill of danger. It's the hush that scale and patient time lay over the mind. Each stone is a cooled exhale from a hotter age. Each horizon a gentle curve raised without theatrics. Each dusk a brief blue worth waiting for. The thin sky isn't an absence so much as a story you can see through. Dust is more than nuisance. It keeps the minutes. Volcanoes don't threaten, they remember. And wind, softer than your body expects, keeps everything just in motion, enough to feel alive. Listen long enough, and a through line appears. A shield faded, air lifted, water left or hid, dust stepped forward, mountains slept, storms learned to darken not by force, but by shadow. Still, in crater rims, in old delta fans, in seams where ice touches rock, warmth lingers from another chapter. A blue sunset, a butterscotch noon, a tower of dust, a mountain broad as a country. Each is a quiet sentence in the same patient paragraph, where a grain alters light, light turns wind, and wind slowly rewrites a world. Follow that paragraph to its deepest line, and you arrive where scale becomes an atmosphere of its own. Begin at the lip of that shadow and feel how it behaves like weather. If the Grand Canyon can quiet a crowd in a breath, the Martian rift called Valles Marineris steals the breath before words form. It runs for something like 4,000 kilometers, nearly 10 times our canyon's length, widens in places beyond 200 kilometers, and falls in tiered steps 7 kilometers deep. Laid on Earth, it would stitch from Atlantic to Pacific, swallowing mountain ranges like soft folds in a blanket. From orbit, the system reads as a long, intricate wound along the equator, a scar you can't help but follow, no matter how high you fly. The name remembers the spacecraft that first showed it in full, the Mariner that arrived in the early 1970 seconds and let the planet's skin speak plainly at last. Before those images, no one imagined a feature of this scale on a smaller, quieter world. But Valles Marineris is not a single gash. It is a quilt of chasms stitched side by side. Candor, Ophir, Melas, Coprates, each with its own rhythm of shelves and cliffs, its own mosaics of landslides, alcoves, and slanting talus. From above, it resembles a handful of near-parallel cracks pulled gently apart and then deepened by time, gravity, and whatever water or lava once found them. How such an immensity formed is a story told in careful voices. Rivers, as the sole sculptors, do not quite fit. The volume of water required, sustained for long ages, strains the evidence. Instead, the bedrock tale begins with stress. To the west, the Tharsis rise swelled the crust, lifting and stretching it until long fractures opened like tired seams. Once the planet's skin split, gravity did the rest. Rock blocks rotated and stepped downward. Caverns collapsed. Walls sloughed in avalanches that would dwarf cities. In places, sudden floods may have rushed along the new floors, carving channels and leaving deposits that still look damp to the imagination. Lakes, too, might have pooled in basins when warmth returned for a season born of volcanism or orbital tilts, only to freeze or evaporate as the air thinned. What remains in the walls is a library. Bands of ash from far eruptions, layers of sediment laid in quieter water, and long intervals when wind was the only mason. Stand at the bottom in your mind and tip your head back. Sheer faces climb kilometers into a thin, honeyed light, bands of oxides shifting from deep brick to ochre to pale cream. The scale is difficult to believe because your body has no reference. A cliff taller than Everest does not fit easily inside a human sense of height. Shadows soften at their edges in the dusty air, turning noon to a kind of permanent late afternoon in narrow corridors. Where the canyon floor widens into basins, side valleys branch like tributaries, inviting the eye to wander. Where it narrows again, the walls draw close and the sky becomes a ribbon, a strip of pale blue at sunset that feels almost private. Here, the air is a little thicker than on the plains above, a small gift of added pressure and slightly warmer temperatures. Wind has its own rules within these ramparts, funneled, slowed, then gathered, capable of carrying dust for long distances without ever escaping. In places, you could walk across the frozen surge of an ancient landslide, boulder fields the size of towns, long runouts that look as if rock had flowed like tar. Low gravity makes such flows travel farther. The patterns gleam with a subtle logic that is different from Earth's, but no less graceful. Morning arrives in stages. First light grazes the upper ledges and paints them gold. Then brightness pours down the terraces step by step until it reaches the floor like water finding levels. Evening reverses the performance. Peaks hold the day last, glowing for a breath before they cool to bronze and then rust in the violet dusk. At night, the walls silhouette against a field of stars so sharp they seem to ring when you look at them too quickly. The quiet is complete enough that even imagination lowers its voice. It is easy to picture a rover inching along the floor, dwarfed by a geometry that shows planetary strength without any need to shout. For people, the canyon offers both hardship and shelter. Its layered walls expose billions of years of stories to a hammer and hand lens. Its modestly higher pressure and warmth could make it a softer place to rest and work. But entry and exit would be pilgrimages in themselves, switchback descents across tailless fans, careful traverses of benches where the past has left ledges too alluring to ignore. Within the walls, caves might wait, tubes drained of lava, voids cut by ancient water places where radiation falls to gentler levels and temperatures keep to narrow bands. If there are delicate traces of older life anywhere near the surface, such hollows would be kind places to search. Even if you never step there, the beauty remains its own reason. From space, the length is almost comic in its excess. On the ground, the textures multiply until you find yourself lost in the play of light and color. Dust devils thread along the floor. Avalanches write fresh streaks on steep slopes. Ripples organize on sand patches the way music organizes in score. The Grand Canyon can make a person feel small. This complex can turn small into a kind of humility that borders on reverence, not fear, but a grateful awareness of scale. Move your gaze north and south to where the planet keeps its memories in shining stacks. Each pole wears a crown, one larger and thinner, one smaller and thicker, bright against the red ground. From orbit, the caps resemble careful brushwork, spirals, scallops, and sweep lines, as if a slow artist had spent a patient winter turning wind into geometry. Beneath that beauty lies mass, layered deposits of water, ice, and dust, built up over millions of years, with seasonal veneers of carbon dioxide that appear and vanish with the swing of the year. In high northern summer, the cap is mostly water ice, its surface cut by curving troughs that echo prevailing winds. In the south, the cap is thicker and more complex. Deep within may lie an old, stubborn bed of dry ice, preserved through cycles that shaved and added above it. Both caps sit atop layer cakes, the polar layer deposits, thin sheets upon thin sheets laid down as the atmosphere breathed and the planet's tilt shifted. Each layer is a page recording a season, a storm, a dust year heavier than the rest, a long span when the sun favored one latitude more than another. Unlike Earth, where water dominates the polar show year-round, the most dramatic transformations here are danced by carbon dioxide. In winter, the cold grows deep enough that the air itself falls out of the sky. CO2 freezes directly onto the surface, thickening the cap by up to a meter. At the other pole, summer returns that dry ice to vapor, and the whole atmosphere swells slightly. Pressure rises and falls with the seasons because the poles act like valves, locking away and then releasing a large fraction of the air in a yearly rhythm. The planet inhales, the planet exhales. Spring is mischief. Sunlight creeps back across a winter pole and penetrates the translucent dry ice, warming the ground beneath first. Gas forms under the slab and cannot easily escape. Pressure builds. Cracks open. Jets burst upward, tossing fans of dust that stain the surface. From above, the fans look like fireworks frozen mid-bloom, their angles pointing with the wind. It is the kind of spectacle that belongs only to a world where sky and ground trade places once a year. Below the seasonal breath lies permanence. The water ice reservoir at the poles is vast. Melt it all, and you could spread a global film more than 10 meters deep, a measure that helps one grasp both the size of the store and the seriousness of the cold that holds it. For explorers, that ice is more than beauty. It is drink and air and fuel, water to sip, oxygen to breathe, hydrogen to burn, all trapped in a form that a patient machine could mine and melt. The caps also keep the long record of climate that Tilt writes. Mars leans and straightens over cycles that last hundreds of thousands to millions of years. When the tilt grows, sunlight visits the poles more generously. The caps retreat, and water shifts toward lower latitudes. When the tilt lessens, the poles lock more of that water away. The layers remember. Count them, sample them, and you hold a climate history in your hands. Not one written by forests or seas, but by frost and dust and the cadence of light over plains. On the ground, the poles are alien and familiar at once, a horizon of white with subtle strokes of wind-blown rust, air colder than memory, even drier than the rest of the planet. Frost films everything, rocks, dunes, the very dust, so the landscape sparkles shyly under a sun that circles without setting in summer and disappears for months in winter. The silence is total, except for the thin hiss of air glancing off ice. You would see ripples carved by wind, pits cut where dry ice sublimed from below, and spiraling troughs that dive toward the cap's heart like mazes of light. Fragility is part of the charm. A frost layer, measured in millimeters, can transform a desert of rust into a quilt of dunes that look like sleeping lambs. Then, spring returns and the white peels back, revealing red and brown beneath. The show repeats, precise as clockwork and soft as breath. From orbit, the spirals and curves invite tracing with a fingertip on a screen. On the ground, the brightness is so clean that every small shadow has power. This is beauty, made by light, air, and ground alone. Their importance reaches beyond aesthetics. The poles steer the planet's carbon dioxide each year. They lock the deep record of past lean and sway. They hold clues about water's journeys, and thus about habitability. To stand there would be to feel time layered underfoot, pages upon pages pressed into ice, each a winter, each a summer, each a whisper of the planet's longer beat. Around you, the frozen desert exhales and glitters, so fine they seem to drift even without wind. Step back from the caps and look up at the two companions that keep silent time. Phobos and Deimos are not the grand, round lantern we know. They are small, dark, lumpy, more like captured rocks than born moons, potato silhouettes mottled with craters, a gray-brown that never quite rises to silver. Phobos is the larger, though larger is generous. Across its longest dimension, it is about 22 kilometers. Deimos is closer to 12. Low gravity means neither could pull itself into a sphere. Their shapes remain irregular, their faces expressive with grooves and pits. Seen from the ground, Deimos is shy. It rises and sets as our moon does, though to the naked eye it is a bright, steady ember more than a disk. Phobos is the busy one. It orbits so close that it circles the planet in a little more than 7 hours. It rises in the west and sets in the east, rushing across the sky several times in a single Martian day. You could watch it climb late in the afternoon and see it drop again before midnight, a regular visitor that never stays long. Where they came from is a question with two beautiful answers. One imagines capture, asteroids from the belt, or farther still drawn in, slowed by chance and atmosphere, and settled into bound paths. Their darkness and composition nod toward that origin. The other envisions a trauma, the aftermath of a giant impact that flung debris into orbit, which then gathered into these small, fragile bodies. That scenario neatly explains their tidy orbits, though it complicates the match with asteroid-like materials. The truth may be a blend, or something more subtle. Either way, the moons live out different fates. Deimos drifts outward, unhurried, In vast time, it may step away entirely, trading a Martian view for a solitary path around the Sunday. Phobos falls inward. It skims only about 6,000 kilometers above the surface, below the height where an object would hover over one spot. Tidal forces and the dance of gravity tug it down by roughly 2 meters each century. The number is gentle, the consequence is massive. In tens of millions of years, 30 to 50, by careful estimates, Phobos will be forced to choose, collide or unspool into a ring. Its weak, rubble-like interior makes disassembly likely. If it breaks, Mars will wear a temporary necklace, debris bright enough to draw lines in the dusk until the particles drift inward to fall as a long, slow rain or wander outward and fade. You can already see the strain written on Phobos. Long, parallel grooves score its surface, some from impacts, others perhaps from tides pulling the body ever so slightly apart. The moon looks like a world that has begun to remember its end. For explorers, the moons are more than curiosities. Phobos, with its low gravity, could be a platform, a place to anchor instruments, relay signals, and watch the planet roll beneath. Deimos is gentler still, a stepping stone for missions heading farther out. Both would offer views to make the careful heart ache. Mars spread below, its deserts and volcanoes and canyon systems laid out like a map that changes only in light. From the ground, Phobos sometimes throws a neat, swift shadow, a small, racing eclipse that sweeps across the surface in half a minute, a wink in a day already pale. Deimos's eclipses are whispers. You might miss them if you were not waiting. Night makes the companionship plain. Deimos moves with poise, a bead against the stars. Phobos hurries, a messenger that never lingers. In the thin, dusty air, their passage feels intimate, as if the sky itself had leaned in to be sure you noticed. Their orbits and destinies add small lines to the planet's larger poem, one restless and doomed to fall apart, one patient and slipping away. Both marking time for a world that has changed so much since they took their stations. Return, finally, to the rift, the crowns, and the companions together. A canyon that can cradle storms and hide in its own weather. Polar caps that inhale and exhale the atmosphere and write climate in pages of ice. Moons that hurry and pause, promising endings we will not see. None of it demands drama. The grandeur lies in patience. Light enters, shadows climb, frost forms and lifts, dust settles and sails. A small moon crosses the sun and draws a quick, soft gray across red ground. If awe arrives, it does so without raising its voice. There is room inside that quiet to imagine futures, sheltered bases tucked into canyon alcoves, instruments reading layers at the poles like archivists with gloved hands, small crews watching Phobos sprint while their machines hum. But there is also value in letting the planet remain itself in your mind for a while longer. A place where the sky is thin and honest, where the largest features are the calmest, where even the moons are modest, and where time writes legibly. In that legibility, the world becomes a companion again, steady and strange, its history visible to anyone willing to look slowly. Red is the first thought, the deep, rusty glow that has named the planet in almost every tongue. But it is only the top note, not the whole song. The color that seems so absolute from far away is the work of a fine, powdery skin that covers almost everything. Iron-rich dust, ground to flour by time, then kissed by the whisper of oxygen in the thin air until it blushed. The chemistry is simple, the patience immense. Rocks that carry iron, much like ours at home, were cracked by cold and heat, chipped by impacts, polished by wind, grained by tiny grain. Their surfaces met oxygen and turned to the reddish compounds we call rust. The layer need not be thick. A few microns are enough to paint a world. From orbit, the planet is a coal that never quite cools, a steady ember against black space. Step closer, and the palette widens. Rust tones still lead, but they share the stage. In some places, the wind has swept the dust thin, laying bare darker volcanic rock charcoal to near black basalt that drinks sunlight. Elsewhere, lighter minerals mingle with dust and soften the red to peach or tan. Minerals add surprises, salts and clays that lean toward greenish-gray or a faint blue, especially under the bright, high light of midday. Sulfates, once precipitated from brines, mark the ground pale yellow or near white. Inside shadowed craters, thin streaks of brilliant white may be frost or ice, clinging to faces that the sun touches only briefly. Even the polar caps, so dazzlingly white at a distance in winter, pick up a delicate pink when dust slips across them in summer. Volcanic country throws deeper shades into the mix. The plains around the Great Shields, Olympus Mons, and its Tharsis neighbors often look darker than their surroundings. Their basalt has not yet been fully reddened by time. Wind will lay its veil over them eventually. For now, the contrast between fresh, dark flows and powdered, lighter ground is a reminder that the surface keeps two clocks, one ancient, one recent, both still ticking. Seasons turn the colors by hand. Planet-wide dust storms lend the air a soft orange, smoothing shadows and flattening contrasts, until hills and plains feel pressed into the same page. When the storms fall silent, the light returns with a different arrangement. New coats, fresh eddies, broad sweeps laid down across ridges and crater rims. A rover's tracks appear dark at first, where wheels have brushed aside the bright coat. Then, weeks or months later, the wind's small fingers restore the surface and the lines fade like writing on a fogged window. Lift your eyes to the dome above, and the story continues. Most days, the sky is not blue, but warm butterscotch. Fine dust particles, floating in air thin as a sigh, scatter sunlight differently than our nitrogen and oxygen sky. Reds and golds carry, blue is pushed aside. Then sunset arrives and the trick reverses. Close to the sun, blue slips through while red scatters away. For a few minutes, the sky near the horizon glows with a gentle, improbable blue, a quiet lantern in a land of copper and tan, before the color dims to the clean darkness of space and the stars sharpen. Imagine the same land under a heavier sky. If the air were thicker and the dust settled, scattering would behave more like home, and midday would likely lean to blue. The ground's reds would pop in that cool light, shadows would soften to a bluish gray, and the polar caps would flash even whiter in winter, their edges etched in light. Or roll the clock back to a younger planet, warmer and wetter, with clouds to gather the light and pour it back in grays and whites. In that world, the dust would have been rarer, colors more muted, water speaking in blues and greens where lakes and seas pooled, dark rocks glistening when rain moved through. The famous red would still be part of the chorus, but not its soloist. Today, dryness sets the palette, no rain to wash the dust away, rare snow that does not linger. The wind lifts, settles, rearranges, and waits. Impact craters register the difference between old and new, some bright, where fresh subsurface material was thrown outward, some dark, where basalts were exhumed, some graded back to rust, where dust later drifted in. There is a quiet artistry to the planet, soft layers rather than bold strokes, a field of hues that change by hour and season if you give your eyes time to learn its grammar. Morning light pulls copper from the ground. Noon flattens to pale. Evening draws the red deeper again. And just before night, the sky gifts a brief blue to frame the last fleck of Sunday. For years we knew these colors only with our eyes. Then we learned the sound of the place too. In 2021, microphones on a rover began to listen, and the planet answered with a silence that was not empty, but deliberate. On Earth, even in stillness, there is always a wash, leaves, insects, distant water, wire hum, the soft confusion of living. On Mars, the background drops to near zero. When something breaks that hush, it stands alone, as if the entire landscape has drawn a breath and is holding it. Wind is the first voice, and it does not roar. It speaks in a low hiss, a soft rush, like air slipping through a narrow seam. Gusts rise, test the rover, and fall away, the pitch changing gently as they pass. The sound is intimate, closer to a whisper than a song, the noise of an alien atmosphere, moving across dust and stone, with no trees to answer, no grass to catch and sing. Now and then you hear the traveler itself, the wheel creak, the dry crunch of grit under tread, the small, careful rattles as instruments adjust. These machine sounds come muted because the air is thin and made of carbon dioxide, a gas that slows sound and hushes the high notes. Words would be softer and lower here, more distant, even across a short space, and they would arrive a beat later than your earth-trained ear expects. Different pitches even travel at slightly different speeds, teasing the sound apart by tone in a way nature almost never does for us at home. Distance eats sound quickly. What is clear a few steps away can vanish when you take two more. Echoes exist, but they are shy, more ghost than chorus, barely present in the thin, dusty air of canyons and craters. Other voices visit in quick sparks. A laser, fired for science, snaps like tiny static as it kisses rock and turns a pinprick of it to plasma, each tick a clue about a mineral's identity. A dust devil slips by, and the microphone brushes against a fragile patter, grains striking metal like light rain on a tent, but with the dryness of paper. Even the air itself whispers. A background hiss almost below hearing, the sound of gas molecules in motion. On this world, that faint murmur is the closest thing to a constant. Imagine standing beside the rover while it listens. The quiet sits on your shoulders. Your own movement becomes the loudest thing, boot on gravel, the rustle of your suit, your breath. The wind touches your helmet in the gentlest way. Far off, a grain clicks against a rock, and then nothing. It is not that the world refuses sound, it is that it allows only a few. What remains has room to be itself. The question beneath every sense, the eye's color, the ear's hush, is the old one that will not leave. Was there ever life here? Not forests, not herds. Something smaller and harder to erase. Microbes the size of patience. For most of our watching, that question lived in stories. Then, in the 1,970 seconds, we carried it in metal down to the ground. Two landers opened their instruments and asked the soil. They did not search for shapes, they searched for metabolism, breath in a bottle, the smallest signature of eating and exhaling. Radio-tagged nutrients were offered to a pinch of dirt. If microbes were present and hungry, the experiment would catch their breath as radioactive carbon dioxide. Another test warmed the soil to see whether heat would release gases suggestive of life's chemistry. The answers came back tangled. One signal looked like yes, others did not. The more we thought, the more it seemed that unusual, reactive chemistry might be doing the work that life would do, only without life. We learned caution. Since then, our path has been gentler. We ask first, was this place ever friendly to life? We look for water in the past, for organics, for rocks that preserve gentle environments. And step by step, the hints have grown. Methane, for instance, on Earth, so often the byproduct of living creatures, though stone can make it too. Methane cannot last long in the thin Martian air. It is broken down by sunlight and chemistry in centuries. When we detect it now in plumes from orbit, in seasonal pulses near the surface, it means something is feeding it. The pattern rises in summer, dips in winter. That could be temperature breathing in rocks or brines. It could be chemistry deeper down. It could be biology. Methane alone cannot say. The surface conspires against memory. Ultraviolet light, cosmic rays, oxidizing soils, everything leans towards scrubbing organics away. Earth buries its old stories, seals them, and returns them to us in stones. Mars leaves them exposed and lets the sky erase. So attention turns to the subsurface, a few meters down, where radiation softens, and salts can keep water liquid in small, stubborn pockets. If life ever took hold, it may have stepped below when the world cooled and dried, learning to live in darkness with chemistry as its Sunday. Drilling to those depths is hard. Our rovers sip at centimeters. But we aim for places where water once pooled, river deltas, lake beds, because mud is a gentle archivist, a fine-grained keeper of delicate shapes. A rover now is caching samples from such a delta, tucking them into clean tubes so that a future mission can lift them home to the full bench of Earth's labs. Another rover, delayed and renamed but still patient in our plans, is designed to touch old clays and search for the patterns life writes when it builds its house from atoms. Even then, certainty will not come cheaply. The standard is high because it should be. A curve in a rock is not a fossil until every other explanation falls away. Chemistry can mimic life's handwriting. We learn that lesson once, and we keep it close. The search on this world is a search for absences and for whispers, textures that look biological, molecules that look born of cells rather than chance, patterns in isotopes that suggest a preference life tends to have for lighter flavors. It may be that the planet once bloomed in small ways and then fell quiet, leaving little behind. It may be that it never crossed the line from chemistry to biology, or it may be that life persists, small and hidden, in places that never see the Sunday. The mystery endures because the planet itself keeps offering just enough water once, chemistry still, energy here and there, to make hope reasonable. Between color and sound, between frost and dust, the world shows a patience that asks to be matched. The red we swear by is a surface on top of many other hues. The hush we hear is not emptiness, but selection. The soil can taste of salts and clays that formed in waters long gone. The air can glow blue for a minute at sunset. The microphones can catch the dry rain of a dust devil. The laser's snap can tell us what a pebble is made of. Rovers draw dark paths that fade. Craters brighten and dim depending on what they dig up or what drifts in. Even the polar crowns change their accents with a season's dust, a winter's breath. Morning might show you copper ground, cool shadows stretching like long strings. Noon would wash the scene to softer tones, details overwhelmed by brightness in thin air. Evening would deepen everything, the rocks warmer in color, the horizon burning briefly gold, and then the sky would give its small, honest blue before night pins constellations to the black with crystal points. Overhead, a potato-shaped moon might hurry past in the wrong direction, tossing a quick eclipse across your path that feels like someone dimmed the light with a hand and then moved on. In pictures, Mars looks settled. In the ear, it sounds settled. In the mind, it moves. Dust rises and falls. Frost writes and erases. Sound arrives and ends. Methane comes and goes. Questions open and pause. If you look long enough, the simple red becomes a field of stories. If you listen long enough, the quiet fills with detail. And if you keep the question of life near, it becomes less about hope or fear and more about method, about letting a careful planet that keeps its records in thin layers and small signals teach you how to read. Perhaps that is the deeper palette, rust and basalt, frost and salt, but also patience and restraint, a world painted by chemistry and time, a sky that knows how to withhold blue until the hour when it means the most, a surface that changes, not by leaps, but by films and veneers and the long breath of dust, a microphone that hears a hiss and a snap and calls them by their proper names, and beneath it all, a question that will change us when it is answered, no matter which way the answer falls. Night returns with its stars. The planet holds its colors close. The wind goes on with its whisper. Somewhere, a rover pauses and listens, and the sound of its own small movement echoes back to it from a stone that has waited billions of years. The red, the blue, the hush, the hint of breath in methane, the lasers crackle, the grains tap, the frost sigh, each is a note in a quiet score. Listen long enough, and you begin to hear the shape of the whole. Before there were maps and measurements, there were stories, glass domes under dusty skies, canals that gleamed at sunset, strange cities breathing gently beneath a red horizon. Telescopes blurred and shimmered, leaving room for invention, and the old books filled it. People strolling along embankments, crystal towers catching thin sunlight. A civilization right there, if you squinted kindly enough. Fantasy wore a spacesuit made of longing. It planted a seed that never quite went dormant, even as sharper eyes and smarter machines began to trade wonder for detail. As knowledge grew, the sketches changed shape, but not heart. Engineers took the brush from novelists and began to draw ships instead of cities, stacks of fuel, cabins packed like careful origami, trajectories threaded through months of deep space. Some plans were grand fleets in convoy, rotating habitats to mimic weight, a small town's worth of tools to be unpacked on a cold, new shore. Others were simple and stubborn. One sturdy craft, one brave crew, a short stay that would make tomorrows longer. The first hurdle was always the same and never small, the going. A journey of many months with everything you need inside your walls, your world reduced to air you recycle, water you reclaim, and routines that turn close quarters into a livable rhythm. Now the dream stands closer to the ground. Space agencies keep files thick with scenarios. Private companies sketch landing ellipses on maps the way cartographers once circled harbors. Rovers have scouted places where a person might someday set a foot and not immediately regret it. With that clarity comes the list of hard truths. Radiation, for one, much of it quiet, steady, and inescapable. Earth's magnetic field and full-bellied sky take the brunt of the sun's temper and the universe's fine rain of high-energy particles. Mars offers neither guard. A crew on its surface would meet doses higher than those on a space station, day after day. Rocks and soil can help. So can thick walls and caves that keep the sky at a respectful distance. All of it takes mass, time, and ingenuity, the quiet work of turning exposure into tolerable risk. Then dust walks in without knocking, not filth, but chemistry and texture, a fine, iron-rich powder that clings, scratches, and finds the path of least resistance into seals and joints. It crackles with static. It may carry salts that demand respect. It fogs visors, dulls panels, and drifts into every crease you forgot to seal. Keeping it out means suit ports and smart airlocks, soft brushes and small rituals, the patience to clean what will be dirty again tomorrow. It is the kind of problem that doesn't roar, it whispers, and wins if you stop listening. Distance is its own weather. Nothing on Mars is far in a telescope. Everything is far when a human is waiting. Messages cross space in minutes, not seconds. You ask, and then you wait. Conversations become letters. Help is what you launched with, and what you can make from what you brought. The landscape is beautiful and spare. The mind needs music and variety. Monotony is not an enemy you can see. It is a slow eater. So you design for people as carefully as you design for machines. Light, color, privacy. The small surprises that keep a day from being only a checklist. Gravity, too, sits in the margins and alters assumptions. It is lighter here, about 38% of home. Your steps will feel buoyed, and heavy things will be friendlier. But the body has habits, and none of them were learned on Mars. We know the cost of too little gravity in orbit. Bone leans toward brittle. Muscle trims itself. Fluids find new balances. Eyes complain. What partial gravity does over months and years is still a door we have not opened. Perhaps exercise and suit design, diet and rotation can coax the body to meet a new normal. Perhaps not. It is an experiment whose subject is always human, and yet the pull of firsts is strong. Imagine the courtesy of that first day. You step from a lander onto dust that has waited billions of years to hold a human print. The sky wears its butterscotch. The sun is smaller, the light a little strange, dim and sharp at once. The air outside is not for breathing. Through your helmet, you hear the quiet your ears have never known, a silence that leaves room for the mind to breathe. Your stride is springy. Small puffs of rust-colored powder lift and hang before they decide to fall. The horizon seems farther than it is because the planet is small. Distance cheats your eye. Cold reaches in despite layers of care. It is not menace. It is simple truth. Everything between you and the world is a machine. Inside, the bubble is gentle. Warm air hums and smells slightly of filters and metal. Water steams in a cup, the same molecules pulled from ice, a short walk away or wrung from the air itself. You set out instruments to learn the local temperament, sensors to taste the wind and count particles, dosimeters to count the quiet rain of radiation, drills to sniff rock. Solar panels tilt open like slow wings. Maybe a greenhouse exhales dampness, and the first little leaves consider the light. Work proceeds without drama. The miracle is not grand. It is a well-run day. Night, when it falls hard. Heat slips away into the black. Stars gain edges. A small, lumpy moon skates by in the wrong direction and throws a fast, neat shadow, a 30-second eclipse that feels like a blink. The other moon takes its time, a bead of light moving with unhurried purpose. You stand a moment longer than you planned, watching and feel the weight of how far you are. Then you duck back in and close the door and listen to the modest sounds of all the systems you depend on. It is fragile, and it is enough. The thought arrives without strain. We are here, not visiting in theory. Here. Before that door ever opened, our machines walked in our stead. They went with no need for air or heat, happy in their way to be cold and precise, content to trade seconds of real time for minutes of delay. They taught us the shape of the ground and the habit of the sky, one patient mission at a time. The first arrivals were brief and shy quick flybys in the 1,960 seconds and early 70 seconds that snapped photos like postcards from a moving train. A cratered world stared back, at first glance, lunar in its quiet scars. Then an orbiter arrived and waited above an entire planet. As a dust storm settled, the skin of Mars revealed its deeper texture, volcanoes that rose like islands, canyons that ran like continental thoughts, channels that told of water gone but not erased. The first landings were acts of exactness and nerve. 2 spacecraft settled to the ground in 1976 and went to work. Cameras painted a horizon in thin light. Arms reached out and scooped. Experiments asked the soil the oldest question and received complicated answers. Years passed and the machines went silent, but the demonstration remained. You could arrive, stay, and think. After a pause, a different kind of traveler rolled onto the stage. A tiny rover tried its feet in 1997 and proved that cautious wheels could wander a little. The planet did not mind. 7 years later, 2 explorers arrived with more range and more appetite. Designed for a short season, they fell in love with the long one. One climbed hills and dug into salt-rich layers, then rested, where the ground had softened too kindly and would not let go. The other wrote a poem of persistence, 15 years of motion across plains and into craters, 45 kilometers of patient curiosity. It watched storms, tasted hematite berries, stared at the far rim of a basin, and then made the crossing. In the end, light faded and heat slipped away. A last signal left and did not return. A human voice on Earth said words that were truer than literal. My battery is low and it's getting dark. An epitaph for a machine and for a chapter. A new rover took the baton in 2012. Larger, warmer, carrying laboratories in its belly. It drilled into ancient mudstones and read them like diaries. It found lakes remembered by clays, organics that had endured the sky's harshness, and a landscape layered into a tidy mountain, each stratum a page of environment. It tweeted in our language because we taught it to, and in doing so reminded us that a mission can be rigorous and tender at the same time. Another arrived in 2021 and chose a delta as home, a fan where a river once held its breath before it met a lake. Its job was to look for whispers fossilized at scales smaller than sight, and to save pieces for a later hand to hold. It brought a toy that grew into a tool. A little helicopter that proved flight is possible under a sky as thin as this. It hopped and looked and led, and the rover followed, and together they stitched air and ground into a single story. Above them, quiet guardians circled and watched. Orbiters mapped with precision, measured seasons, tracked storms, and scouted good places to arrive. From their pictures we learned to walk virtually, following dried channels with a finger on a screen, tracing a rover's prints days after they were made. Weather there asks for respect without theatrics. A day might brush 20 degrees above freezing near the equator at the height of summer, and then drop by 70 or more after dark. Thin air cannot hold heat. The world cools like a bell ringing once and fading. Winds can reach speeds that sound fierce. Your body would hardly feel the push, though your equipment would quickly taste the dust they carry. Seasons follow a familiar tilt. Mars leans by about as much as we do, but each season lingers roughly twice as long. Because the planet takes its time around the Sunday summer, does not mean warm so much as less cold and more light. Winter grows long and crisp, and the poles inhale the atmosphere itself as carbon dioxide freezes out. Sometimes the entire globe agrees to turn orange. A dust storm lifts, warms the air aloft, changes winds, lifts more dust, and the loop closes. Weeks pass before sunlight regains its steadiness. And always, the sunsets do their trick. The center blue, the edges gold like a small, nightly reminder that familiar rules can invert gracefully. Terraforming lives where engineering and myth meet for coffee. The idea is simple in outline. Make the air thicker, trap more heat, melt what is frozen, and let water flow again. Release greenhouse gases and convince the planet to warm itself. Aim sunlight at the poles with mirrors. Wake ancient stores of carbon dioxide and water so they join the sky and the ground in a new balance. The pictures in our heads move quickly. Seas spreading in basins, hills wearing green, children walking bareheaded under a pale blue. Then the math arrives. The planet may not hold enough accessible carbon dioxide to build the blanket we want. What we do, free will, drift, molecule by molecule, into space over time, because there is no magnetic umbrella to tuck it under. The project begins to look less like a century and more like a saga, if it is possible at all. Smaller circles are more honest. Build cities under domes or inside lava tubes. Control the air where you live, and let the world be itself outside. Grow forests the size of neighborhoods, not continents. Make lakes you can walk around in an afternoon. This is called many names, paraterraforming among them, and it asks less from the cosmos and more from us. It trades romance for responsibility. It is also easier to pause or reverse. It leaves the broader planet largely untouched while we learn how to be neighbors. Ethics walk alongside plans. If there is native life here, even in the quietest, deepest pockets, our urge to make the place more like home could erase something irreplaceable. We would not just be changing a landscape, we would be ending a unique chapter of planetary history. Some say we owe Mars patience until we know. Others say the long story of our survival asks us to learn to live in more than one place, and that we can craft a code that protects what is fragile while we build what is needed. Between those views lies work, careful searches for life, clear rules about contamination, humility in the face of uncertainty. Imagine a morning, a decade, or a century from now. A pressure suit hangs by a hatch dusted in red. A greenhouse murmurs. A child counts the seconds of a Phobos eclipse out loud, because 30 is a number you can hold. The weatherboard shows a daytime high that would be pleasant if you could feel it, and a nighttime low that reminds you why you will not. Outside, panels track the sun. A small digger hums at the edge of an ice trench. Inside, a kettle sighs, and someone laughs at a joke that would not be funny anywhere else. A radio delay turns good morning into a postcard. A window looks west toward a low range of hills that turn bronze and then ink. The sky does its brief blue. You taste your coffee and think of glaciers, deserts, empty rooms, places on Earth where people learned endurance and made culture from it. You are not conquering anything. You are learning to belong without taking over. The seed planted by fiction grew toward real light. Each mission, added a ring of growth. Each problem became a practice. We learned how to land with care, how to drive with humility, how to listen to thin wind, how to let dust have its say without letting it decide everything. We learned to accept that some answers will arrive as maybes for a long time. We learned that machines can be brave when people are precise. We learned that a world can be harsh and hospitable at once if you bring patience. Stand in the door once more, half in and half out. The ground glows in the last angle of day. Your boot print sits clean and absurdly ordinary beside a wheel track. Far away, a ridge remembers a lake. Overhead, a small moon hurries and another lingers. Somewhere in the quiet, a cached tube of rock waits for hands you will never shake. Somewhere else, a microphone listens for a dust devil's dry rain. The air is thin, the story is not. The planet does not ask to be changed, but it does not refuse company. If we come gently measuring, mending, making room for silence, we may find that living here is less about remaking a world and more about becoming the kind of guests who can share one. The old books guessed at canals and cities because they wanted Mars to meet us halfway. The truth is stranger and kinder. The planet offers patience, clarity, and scale. We bring shelter, curiosity, and care. Between those gifts, a future can take root. Not fast, not loud. A dome at first, a tunnel, a garden, a school where children learn that sunsets can be blue and that quiet can be full. A long practice of breathing together with a place that has forgotten how to keep its own heat. A promise kept not in grand speeches, but in well-maintained filters and a habit of looking up. Some people dream of a gentler red world turning green, air warming, ice loosening, small leaves lifting their faces to a softer Sunday. They hold Mars as a safety net for a restless species, a second hearth if the first one falters. Others prefer the quieter promise. Visit without conquering. Listen before changing. Learn to live as careful guests under a sky that has never needed us. Between those impulses stretches a long bridge of ethics, ambition, and practicality. Even the brightest scenarios speak in centuries, maybe millennia. Over spans like that, our tools will change, our values will mature, and we ourselves may become strangers to the people we are now. By the time we could paint the planet green, we might decide the better art was restraint, building small pockets of comfort while letting the larger world remain itself. For now, terraforming is a working thought, not an urgent task. It asks what it means to reshape a place that has endured for 4 billion years without our hands on the dial, and whether the story we most want to write is one of alteration or one of companionship. Long before cameras revealed dunes and craters in merciless detail, Mars lived in our myths and dramas. Its red, visible even to a naked eye, on a cold night, braided the planet to the color of blood. Civilizations made that thread into gods and omens. Romans gave the world Mars, second only to Jupiter, in their sky of power. Greeks spoke of Ares with a temper and a taste for noise. Elsewhere, the planet wore other names with the same iron in them: Nergal in Babylon, Mangala in Hindu traditions, each version holding a whisper of danger. The symbolism outlived marble temples and drifted into literature. Telescopes sharpened in the late 19th century and delivered dark blotches, bright caps, and lines that some observers swore were straight. Giovanni Schiaparelli called them canali, channels. English translations promoted them to canals, and that one linguistic slip invited an entire civilization into being. Writers ran toward the opening. H.G. Wells imagined desperate neighbors in need, crossing the void to seize a greener world. His Martians were reflections of human anxieties, imperial ambitions painted in alien ink, technology racing ahead of mercy. Decades later, a radio dramatization turned the story into a night of startled hearts and second thoughts, proof that Mars had become a stage for our most urgent projections. Pulp adventures followed desert cities under twin moons, ruins and honor codes, sword fights in air too thin for flame. Then gentler, stranger visions arrived. Ray Bradbury's soft, aching chronicles of settlers who learned that the landscape they crossed would change them as much as they changed it. Observatories opened domes to the public. Newspapers stirred curiosity and rumor into the same pot. Even careful scientists entertained seasonal color shifts as hints of vegetation, squinting at the caps and seeing weather where there was chemistry. The planet seeped into music and paintings too, orchestras hammering out warlike themes, canvases filling with fragile arches and impossible towers set against pale sky. Mars became a mirror holding up our fear of scarcity, our hope for company, our itch to go. The mirror is clearer now, yet it still reflects us as much as it reveals itself. The canals dissolved into memory, and with them the certainty that we knew what lived there. What remains is more interesting, a place that can carry many stories without committing to any one of them. In the years ahead, the red dot will feel less like a distant punctuation mark and more like a page we keep rereading. That is not because Mars will change quickly, it is because we will. Agencies and companies sketch supply chains and landing ellipses. Timelines bloom and slouch. Budgets and breakthroughs take turns at the wheel. The next steps belong to robots with deeper patience and sharper tools, rovers that can wander farther on a single sunrise, drills that can reach down to where radiation softens and water hides, small factories that can pull oxygen from carbon dioxide and test the arithmetic of a future outpost. Returning rock to Earth will be its own quiet revolution. A handful of samples on a lab bench could rewrite parts of a planet's past, moving theories from maybe to notice the layers here and the chemistry there. Orbiters will go on with their long, graceful work, watching dunes crawl, frost bloom and vanish, clouds thread the morning, dust storms gather and relax. Weather on Mars is not a drama you feel on your skin, so much as a slow ballet you watch with instruments. Pressure rising as winter, CO2 returns to the air, temperatures tilting in long seasons, blue sunsets that briefly invert familiar rules. We will know those rhythms the way you know a neighbor's garden when the shade reaches the bench, when the first ice comes late, which corners hold wind long after the path is still. Human flights, when they happen, will be the large, careful breaths after a long inhale. The trip is a journey of months, the return another long line on the calendar. A round trip draws near to 3 years. When you add the waiting window for the planets to line up for home, radiation accumulates with the steadiness of a metronome. Spacecraft must be strong and light, a pair of opposites that engineers learn to introduce as friends. Entry, descent, and landing on Mars is its own riddle. The atmosphere too thin to do all the braking for a heavy craft, too thick to ignore. Parachutes must help, but cannot be the whole answer. Heat shields must glow and shed their courage. Rockets may take over in the final seconds without stirring the dust into blinding fog. Solving that sequence is not a single invention, it is a choreography. If boots touch dust, the next question is duration. A short stay gives us knowledge and proof. A long stay asks for systems that heal themselves. Water can be mined from buried ice or coaxed from air. Oxygen can be pulled from carbon dioxide. Plants can turn light and patience into food and calm. Each thread is feasible, weaving them into a fabric that does not tear when a part frays is the work. Farther along the road lie sketches of communities under domes and inside lava tubes, with warm light and quiet corridors, radiation held at arm's length by rock and regolith, power from suns and small stars of our own making. Children might grow up knowing Earth as a lesson and a longing, oceans described by people who have listened to their roar but cannot take you to the cliff to hear it. For some minds, that thought is comfort, a second cradle if the first is threatened. For others, it tastes of hubris, a hurry to plant where we have not yet learned to tend. There is another vision that does not ask for many feet on the ground. In it, Mars becomes a sanctuary for study, the Antarctica of the inner solar system. People visit, measure, and leave. The red stays largely red. The landscape keeps its long, unbroken pages. It is a discipline that values restraint as much as discovery, a way to say we can care for more than we use. If traces of life exist, they're faint, slow, or long gone. Less is more. We could see 100 years that mix these approaches. Permanent robotic stations, occasional crews, cargo ships, buzzing back and forth with samples and parts. A growing intimacy without a full embrace. No matter which thread we follow, the conversation between worlds will become daily life rather than distant rumor. Children looking up a century from now may point and say there are people there tonight, walking under a small sun. Or they may look with the same wonder we hold now, grateful that a neighbor remains quiet and intact. Either future has grace. Either one asks for care. From the red soil, our home is a grain of light. You could hide it behind a gloved fingertip, lose it in a breath of dust if you were not careful. On nights when the air is steady and fine particles settle, the dot steadies too. A pale blue with a touch of white, where clouds circle. Through a telescope, continents blur in and out like thoughts that refuse to be held. The moon travels with it, a faithful companion drawing a faint arc in the same sky. Together they cross from one low horizon to the other, like a slow pair skating through deep black. The distance between the two worlds stretches and relaxes with the orbits. At the best of times, radio takes a few minutes to cross the gap. At the worst, light needs 20. That delay turns talk into letters. You choose words more carefully. You learn to make peace with silence that is not empty, but full of travel. From that vantage, borders evaporate. You cannot see lines on a map for millions of miles. You cannot hear argument. What you can feel is fragility, a small sphere wrapped in a thin skin of air, bright because water and life scatter sunlight in forgiving ways. Astronauts close to Earth speak of the overview effect. From Mars, that feeling would arrive like a tide you cannot brace against. There is tenderness and ache in that view. The Martian ground is beautiful and foreign. Red dust, angular stones, horizons that curve closer than your mind expects. There are no forests, no seas, no tides, no bird dawns. The little blue light becomes a tether to all of that. It is proof that warm rain is real somewhere, that salt still dries on skin, that storms have sound and smell. Mission planners speak quietly about the weight of this on the first cruise, the months-long travel times, the delays in conversation, the impossibility of stepping through a door and going home if you need to. Earth in the sky might comfort and torment in the same breath. It tells you you belong, It tells you how far away belonging is. Perspective softens and widens. You begin to see Earth not as the center, but as one living place among many stones and fires. Care becomes less a slogan and more a reflex. You feel kinship grow in both directions, toward the blue and toward the red. One world green and warmed, the other red and spare, both held by the same star, both etched by the same physics. Your imagination steps farther still and sets Earth against Jupiter's night sky, or Saturn's. Everything starts to look like one story, with chapters set in different rooms. Rituals form. A person may step outside at the end of a long day, stand on a flat of compacted dust, and raise a visor just enough to darken the glare. There it is, the dot that holds families, cities, mountain ranges, lullabies, and instructions for soup. That sight might carry them through many hard hours that follow, reminding them that home is not a single place, but a thread between places. Over years, the idea of home could shift for all of us, from a planet to a relationship. Earth as cradle, Mars as outpost, both stitched together by knowledge, kindness, and the honest admission that we need each other. The sky here changes the heart as well as the eye. Constellations tilt into unfamiliar shapes. The planets play in slightly different positions, but among those altered patterns, one thing is yours. You can point to it. You can say, there, not with ownership, but with gratitude. And in that gratitude, the loudest dreams grow quieter. Terraforming remains on the table as a question we take seriously and answer slowly. We practice smaller forms of care, first domes lit like dawn, tunnels warm as kitchens, greenhouses that smell like basil and wet soil. We let the planet set many of the terms. We learn its patience and adopt some of it. The silence that greets you here is not a void. It is a medium. Sound travels reluctantly. The few noises that persist wind like a whisper, a pebble's dry tap, the soft rattle of a machine take on meaning out of proportion to their size. You hear your own breath. You hear the small motors you rely on. You hear the body you carry. It makes a person mindful in ways no training can simulate. You step lightly because the world asks you to, and because you want to keep hearing what little there is to hear. There are days for philosophy and days for bolts. You patch a seal. You brush dust from a panel with gentle strokes. You run a filter and watch numbers and allow yourself the small glow of systems working as designed. You read a message that left home a quarter hour ago and feel it arrive in your chest as if it had crossed the street. You teach a student to recognize a mineral under harsh light. You share a quiet joke about forgettable food. You attend to small comforts the way sailors did on long crossings. Someone plays a song that makes the room feel bigger. At the edge of all this, the question of changing the planet remains, neither rushed nor dismissed. Would we be good gardeners at the scale of a world? Do we know enough to do no harm? Can we keep curiosity at the center and let pride step aside? If native life sleeps in the dark or lingers in brines, do we owe it silence and space? These are not riddles with quick answers. They are the kind that shape a culture. Maybe one day we will vote with our hands and our tools and choose a path that adds warmth and water. Maybe we will choose restraint and build beauty within walls while leaving the clouds and dunes to their ancient routine. Either way, the measure of us will be how thoughtfully we decide and how gently we walk. At night, the planet keeps its counsel. Dust settles into thin films that catch starlight. Frost writes brief signatures on rock and vanishes by noon. Far away, a rover's wheel cuts a line that the wind will erase with patience, not malice. Overhead, Phobos runs toward an eclipse and lets it pass before your mind finishes naming it. Deimos takes longer, the elder sibling who doesn't need to hurry. Earth gleams like a memory and a promise at once. You look, and you feel the idea of home expand, no longer a single shore, but a constellation of places held together by care. You breathe, and the helmet fogs for a second, and you smile at the small proof that you belong to air and water still. Then you turn back to the warm light and the murmuring filters and the people who make this place human, a handful of beating hearts on a quiet world, practicing the art of staying without taking, listening without rushing, and letting a red planet be a teacher as much as a destination. Silence on Mars isn't the absence of sound so much as the absence of crowds. Humans grew up in the chorus, voices close at hand, footsteps on floors, birds stitching air with calls, a breeze combing leaves. Take that away, and the mind hears itself. Even if you share a habitat with a small crew, step outside, and the planet meets you with indifference vast enough to feel like weather. The horizon runs without interruption. Walk any direction, and nothing answers back. No leaf's friction, no insect thrum, no water's bright chatter, only your own breath drumming inside the helmet and the fine, dry crunch of boots on grit. Sometimes a faint thread of wind slips over rock. It does not howl. It sighs in a pitch so thin you can almost disbelieve it. That whisper has crossed the same ground for millions of years. For some, such quiet will press like a weight. With so few anchors, no shifting smells of soil and rain, no casual variety to measure time, it's easy for days to blur and small worries to grow ornate. Rhythm becomes medicine. You invent rituals, morning checks that never vary, a planned walk to a particular boulder, tea at the same hour, a note you write to yourself and answer tomorrow. You tune the habitat like an instrument, set lights that mimic dawn and dusk, play a song while cooking, let a greenhouse add leaf sounds to the room. The mind likes pattern. It learns to trust a schedule when the landscape offers none. Others will call the quiet a gift. Without the constant subfloor hum of engines and electricity, without notifications, without the distant machinery of cities, attention sharpens. You begin to notice the texture of dust where it has drifted into leeward curls, the way shadows lift off rocks as the thin sun climbs, the soft rasp of your sleeve when you reach for a sample bag. Time widens. The planet does not rush. Nothing here grows or decays at human speed. Seasons take their time twice as long by the clock we use at home, and dust storms build and fall away with a patience that reduces urgency to scale. The silence feels old, and because it is old, it can feel kind. It existed long before there was anyone to hear it. It will remain when our voices have moved on. To stand in it is to be offered a rare perspective, the sense that you've stepped outside the jangle of everyday time into something slower, steadier, less interested in you, and somehow more generous for that indifference. The planet answers questions with data and with restraint. Science has the close work, measuring air pressure in shavings of a Pascal, reading mineral fingerprints with needles of light, mapping slopes and fractures fine enough to trace a boulder's tumble. We know that iron oxide dust is the thin paint that reddens the world. We see mountains that rose not in fury but in long patience, eruptions layered upon eruptions until low slopes grew absurdly high. We understand that canyons opened not by rivers' steady bite alone, but by stress that split the crust and let gravity and time deepen the wound. Each instrument fills a line in a ledger, and the lines add up to something sturdy enough to lean on. And yet the ledger leaves space for wonder, because answers invite better questions. Was there a season when the world wore blue and green, when rivers ran and shallow seas glittered under a thicker sky? Did microbes wake in those waters on warm rock, in mineral-rich shallows, and write the first small verbs of metabolism? If they did they fail when the air thinned and the cold returned? Or did they retreat underground into brines, where salts hold water liquid against the rules of surface weather? The methane we sometimes catch in the air refuses to pick a side. It can be stone's doing or life's. It comes and goes. We listen. It does not explain. Beyond numbers, there is a language that does not fit in tables. The brief blue at sunset, when dust scatters red away, the frail frost sequined on a dune under needles of starlight, the slow ballet of two misshapen moons, one wandering outward, one falling inward, step by measured step. There is poetry in the geometry of a delta, fossilized into rock fan, in the way a dust devil scribbles a temporary line across a plain and leaves, in the patient breath of the polar caps that exhale and inhale their own atmosphere. The planet asks to be studied. It also asks to be felt. As a mirror, it helps us read ourselves. Dry riverbeds sketch our own waters in negative. Caldera rims freeze a moment in planetary heat we still know on Earth, as volcanoes breathe and plates carry continents along slow paths. The thinned air and lost shield worn in a way no sermon can. Habitability is a balance, not a birthright. Every image sent home is a portrait of a place, and also a self-portrait of a species, leaning outward, curious by default. You can see, in each rover's wheeled track and each carefully chosen sample, the same restlessness that once pressed canoes off coasts and caravans along unseen roads. Imagination meets method here and makes a third thing: dreams with data behind them, caution with courage braided through. Mars also teaches a different kind of scale. You plan, you launch, you wait for orbits to align. The planet does not move faster for us. It turns and circles exactly as it did before our first fire, and it will keep that pace when our most confident plans have turned to footnotes. That mismatch can be bracing in the best way. It suggests humility not as apology, but as a correct setting. We are learning to speak in a time signature closer to the thing we are studying. If a person steps onto that dust and looks up, Earth will not be a world but a star. The mind will try to reconcile the two truths. Everything I love is there, and it is only a pinprick here. In that reconciliation is a feeling astronauts have described from near orbit, and that distance will amplify a tenderness that comes from seeing home as small and finite, wrapped in a film of air thin enough to lose. Blue because oceans and life scatter light kindly. You are reminded, without argument, that care is not a slogan, but a practice. The planet's quiet is a teacher too. Without the constant training noise of life, you hear decisions forming. You find that meaning hides in small places, laminations in a cliff face, cross-bedding that tells of water and wind taking turns, a thin rind of salt around a pebble that says, there was once damp here. Survival looks less like dominance and more like endurance. Mars has endured, not in the way Earth has with green growth and ceaseless recycling, but by keeping its record open where anyone with patience can read. It holds marks of water's hand, scars of impact, the geometry of slow cooling. Studying it is like tracing the life of an elder whose story is not yours, but whose choices shaped your world. Ambition will always want to edit the place to warm its air, thicken its sky, draw blue where red has ruled. The more we learn, the taller that order grows. Worlds are not easily tuned. Sometimes the brave thing is to listen before you speak, to build comfort in domes and caves while letting the wider landscape keep its long sentences. The listening changes us. It sharpens our sense of risk and scale. It stretches patience. It asks for stewardship at home as practice for manners away. Look long enough, and you will find kinship inside difference. Dunes ripple in patterns that match equations we already know. A landslide spreads in a shape our mountains have taught us to recognize. Frost writes the same delicate physics on rock here as it does on a window pane there. The sameness is never total. The rhyme is clear enough to comfort. You are far, but the universe is one workshop. Machines have brought us here in spirit. Their photographs carry a kind of intimacy, a wheel half buried in powder, a drill hole ringed by bright rock, a horizon curved more tightly than Earth's. Seismographs tick with the planet's small quakes. Weather stations catch the slow rise and fall as carbon dioxide freezes and sublimates with the year. Spectrometers uncurl spectra like music, each spike a note for iron, for calcium, for the residue of brines. Each trace is a sentence. Together they tell a story whose chapters span billions of years, but that still feels personal when a rover's shadow stretches across a stone and the stone keeps its counsel. What stands out when you pull back is the way all the strands cross. Science's steady light, mystery's refusal to go out, and the softer thread that runs through both the part that moves when a blue sunset catches you by surprise, when a hollow in the ground reads as the ghost of a lake, when you realize the wind you are hearing is older than language. The planet permits all three. It will let us quantify, it will continue to withhold, and it will offer beauty without commentary. Few places give such a clean combination. Lessons arrive without scolding. Lose your magnetic shield and the sky takes its due. Thrift with heat. Nothing holds it for you overnight. Balance is not a metaphor. It is a requirement with numbers attached. And still, there is grace. The mountains rise into thin light with impossible calm. The caps breathe. The canyon shadows stratify their colors through afternoon like a slow chord. Endurance is art enough to admire. If you were to call Mars a book, it would be the neighbor volume on the shelf to our lush, noisy tome. Many pages are faded, some have been torn, others were never written on. The margins are full of dry notes, dust that moved this far this year, frost that reached this latitude, a boulder that rolled after a quake and stopped at the toe of a slope. Reading it changes how you hold your own book. You handle the spine with more care. You notice the thinness of your paper and the way the ink can blur if you leave it in weather. There's a gentleness in the thought that we might go there not to perfect, but to attend, to take turns with instruments and shovels, to send home rocks that admit to lakes and layers, to experiment with small, steady comforts that do not spill into the surrounding quiet. You can imagine a crew ending a long day by stepping outside for a minute, just beyond the pool of light, to look for the blue star that holds their families. It appears low and small. They count the seconds it takes for a message to arrive and let the arithmetic soft boil into feeling. The dot steadies them. It also asks a lot. Both things can be true. The story tied to this world has never been just mechanics. It is curiosity that never learned to sit still, ethics that try to keep pace, engineering that makes space for both. It is also patience, the sort hard to practice anywhere busy. The planet turns regardless. The sun lifts and sets on its own schedule. Dust will erase our tracks eventually. That erasure is not threat, it is reminder. Close your eyes And you can hold the elements in simple form: a red plain with frost at its edges, a sky that refuses blue until the exact right moment, a canyon where noon is a shade darker than you expect, a pair of moons that teach two different kinds of time. Then open them and return to the particulars. Air pressure readouts, spectra, a seismogram with a tremor's neat spike, a photograph of a pebble banded like candy because minerals precipitated in a rhythm water once kept move between the two freely. That, too, is the gift. If people come to stay, they will bring stories like tools and use them generously. They will talk about the first long wheel tracks, the grain of sand that tapped a microphone, the sample tube sealed against a future laboratory, the moment a child born under domes saw Earth with their own eyes and learned the word home in a new key. They will not own the place. They will learn to share it with each other, with the machines that preceded them, with the slow weathers and old winds that will still be here when their names have faded. Until then, the planet continues spinning, circling, keeping its quiet appointments. The red horizon takes thin light and makes more of it than seems possible. Shadows lengthen and cross, meeting in a geometry only that hour knows. Somewhere, a dust devil walks a private path. Somewhere else, a patch of frost etches a rock and vanishes by noon. In a sky that looks almost empty, a small, steady blue returns night after night when the air is calm. It is enough to know that both worlds glow in each other's skies, one bright with water and weather, one bright with patience. The distance between them is not a fence, it is a classroom. And in that vast, gentle room, Mars waits without hurry, a planet, a puzzle, and a poem we are still learning to read.